Soundstripe. Soundstripe.
So I wanted to introduce my friend Jeff here. My friend, he's a pastor at a church that I used to attend, and we've kind of just kept in touch over the years through I think it's Facebook or Instagram. I don't remember.
Yeah,
One of the two, probably both.
Yeah.
You know, nowadays this guy's the bodybuilding pastor. He's like those guys back in the day. What was it on TBN? They would rip the phone books and
break bricks with your head
break
and
bricks.
stuff like that. Done all
So-
that. Yep.
So that's Pastor Jeff here. So he's the head hope dealer for Hope of the Valley Church, and I just want to thank him for coming on. It's been a while, so we're gonna go through a topic that's interesting, and it's tough to actually bring out in the forefront. So we're gonna do it with grace, and but we're gonna tackle this topic. And Pastor Jeff, you want to
Just
say anything?
Say so. I'm just glad to be here, man. This is my first podcast with anybody. I've done some radio, but never this. And when you brought this topic to me, I was like, "That's great, man. That's something God's been working with me on, and I feel like I can speak to it with some knowledge and experience. So I hope this is really productive and a blessing to somebody today."
Man, what our topic is today, it's church hurt, and I'm just going to go through a brief, because it's not really a textbook definition for church hurt, but church hurt is the pain, emotional scars, spiritual harm, or trauma experienced with negative interactions, abuse, or betrayal within the church community, or by the members, leaders, or like the institution itself. And then, there's a difference. I want to go through that there's a difference between being disappointed in, like a church, like say you get in an argument with somebody or somebody, especially in the bigger churches, there are certain people that get upset about, certain small things and they end up leaving the church. But this is something different. We're talking about like deep spiritual wounds caused by
real damage that you experienced. Yeah.
So I just want to go through your experience with church and church hurt. I know we've been a church together, but there was a couple of churches I had before, and it was just honestly, I don't know how I remained a Christian.
Yeah.
Because it was all God. Because
Absolutely. Yeah.
it was pretty much a free for all, and this one there was some other stuff going on, but just go ahead and speak to
Yeah, man.
experience.
Well, so my church experience is lifelong. My dad was a pastor in a real mainline kind of a United Methodist denominational church. So I grew up in church in the sense of kind of seeing the politics of it and what my dad went through, but I didn't understand the gospel, and God didn't save me until I was almost 17. Like I understood what the Bible said Jesus was, Easter, Christmas, that was kind of my faith, and not real strong at all. But when I was introduced to the gospel, God saved me, and it was a radical transformation. It was like, oh, this makes sense. Like I'm a sinner. I need a savior. Wow. Like, ooh, lights went on. Amazing. And God called me to ministry. Like really early on, I recognized what I was supposed to do and what that looked like, and I started to actively pursue that. I went to a ministry training school out here in Phoenix from when I was 18 to about 20, and went back to Pennsylvania. The church that I got saved at was a Pentecostal church, pretty big church in the area that I grew up in. And it was never intentional. I don't think anyone, but I got this idea from what I heard and the teaching I was receiving that like my relationship with Jesus was very performance-based. Like if I did the right things, if I, prayed enough, read enough, witnessed enough, went to church enough, didn't sin, tried to make myself holy, all these things that God would approve of me.
Yeah.
But if I didn't do those things, then like I went through this whole thing of like, can I lose my salvation? Am I even saved? Do I know Jesus? Like this real deep pain that I went through. And a pastor at that who was at that church as an associate pastor, kind of started his own church, and he really took me under his wing, man. My dad had a car accident when I was a young teenager, and it left him with some mental damage. He was legally blind. So my dad wasn't really there as my dad as a teenager. Well, this guy kind of took me under his wing and was like, yeah, I'm going to train you, I'm going to teach you, and I really wanted that. And it probably took me about 8 years to realize how unhealthy this guy was as a pastor. You know, he started this small church, and I'm like, he said, you're my assistant, I'm there, he's let me preach and do stuff. But looking back, and there's so much manipulation, there was so much unhealthy stuff going on there. And eventually he got confronted with some stuff he was doing in the background. And because it was an independent church and he had everything, he just shut the church down and bailed.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, I'm 21 and not knowing what to do with that. I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm like, okay, what do we do? I'm married at the time. And we decided to move back out here to Phoenix. And I come out here, I'm working with the ministry group that I trained under here in Phoenix for a couple years. Didn't quite turn out the way I was looking to. I was working in juvenile detention at the time as a line staff. And there was a pastor from a church over in the West Valley that I'd been talking to. He approached me. He said, hey, we're looking for somebody to come and like run an outreach program at our church. Maybe youth pastor would be interested. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that. And so I did the interview and everything. And I was like all gung-ho. I was probably 24 or 25, you know, and I just real idealistic about what church is like, and we're going to change the world together for Jesus, and I love kids, and we're just going to preach the gospel, and we're just going to read. It's going to be awesome. And it just wasn't like that, you know. I got in there, and lots of conflict. The tradition I'd been raised in, the denominations I'd been in, definitely didn't fit with the direction they were in, and I didn't know at the time that would be a problem, but it was definitely a problem.
Yeah.
And there was a guy who was a youth pastor there when I was the outreach director, and we kind of worked together on stuff. And then the senior pastor had a moral failing and had to step down. And the guy who was a youth pastor became the pastor, and then he was my boss. And we just butted heads, man. It was like we just could not get together in it.
Yeah.
And so eventually, you know, after a long period of time, I left to take an opportunity to start a ministry program in Denver, Colorado. Well, in Denver, I get there and they said, we're going to do this and it's going to be great. And you can turn so I bought a house, moved my whole family there from Phoenix. I had 2 little kids at the time, like a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and moved everybody there, sold everything out there, just up and relocated my whole life. Well, we're there for 6 months, and we're going through the programming for the next year, and I'm working on a budget. And I said, well, okay, here's the budget, And the senior pastor church, they'd moved me out here saying I'm going to run this program. Senior pastor church sitting across the table from me goes, so how are you going to pay your salary? I said, how am I going to pay my salary? He says, well, yeah, they don't see that in the budget in your fundraising. I was like, you guys were going to pay my salary. I'm going to run the ministry. Oh, no, brother, we're going to have to do this by faith. You're going to have to raise your own salary. I was like,
oh, wow.
I got a wife and 2 kids, man. Like, what are we talking about here? So I was like, what am I going to do? Well, the pastor of the church I'd left to go out there hits me up and wants me to come and speak at a men's conference. I was like, great, let's do it. And then I get there and he goes, hey, what would it take to get you to come back here as a youth pastor? I said, man, we didn't get along too well last time. Are you sure? And he's like, no, absolutely, man. We're going to do it. We're going to go full out. It's going to be great. And I did that. And it had its great moments, man. I'm still in contact with a lot of kids I youth pastored. I met you there, you know, and a lot of good relationships, but boy, it wasn't good. And the ministry there kind of ran from the top down. Like the guy who was pastoring was very controlling, wanted to do things his way. That was the only way. There was no real room for transformation in that. And, you know, we were about the same age, and I was kind of looking at him like, bro, like, come on. Like, and there just wasn't mutual respect. There wasn't mutual cooperation there. So I decided I was going to leave because he demoted me from youth pastor to making me like doing paperwork for an outreach they were running, being like a guidance counselor of sorts.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, okay, I can't do that. So I found a position at a church in town that wanted a youth pastor, growing church, kind of in the suburbs in 40 in Glendale, and I came on there, and boy, it was a dream job, man.
Was it?
It was awesome. I loved it. Loved the youth. Pastor was super supportive. Everything was going great. And I was married to my wife at the time, my kids, and she left me for somebody else right in the middle of all that. And from my experience in church, I was like, man, they're going to fire me,
Yeah.
right? And because that's what I'd seen before in other churches, people who struggled with sin, people who had like failings in their marriage or something, they got kicked to the curb. This church was really gracious, man. They got around me, got me in counseling, offered to get my ex in counseling, offered to try to work on family restoration. She didn't want that, but it was really amazing, and it really did something in my life, and I was just loving what was happening at the church. And I was there, and the youth group was growing, and make good relationships with kids. God's working on people's lives. And so I was like, all right, this is good. I'm here, I'm planning on staying here forever. Like, this is where God called me, right? And I got remarried in that time. And the woman I got remarried to, I got remarried too soon. Let's say that. Like, I'm not going to throw shade on her at all. Neither of us were in a healthy place. Shouldn't have been married. I just jumped into it too soon. Started to have problems. Once again, the church was super supportive. I got a new director there, and about a year after he came on as a director, sat me down in my office and said, hey, we want you to pray about that maybe God's moving you somewhere else. I went, well, we don't want to hold you back from opportunities that God may have for you. And I was like, no, God didn't tell me I'm going anywhere else. Has he told you something that I don't know about?
Yeah.
And so I got let go very suddenly. It was really weird. There was some stuff that happened behind the scenes there. I even spoke to the pastor directly, and he's a great guy. We're still friends today. But I spoke to the senior pastor, and I was like, hey, man, this guy's lying about me. There's some shady stuff going on here. Are you sure you want to let me go on what he's saying? And they did, And that's kind of where the wheels came off for me with church. I've been 30, older than that then. Mm-hmm. And my whole life had been focused around ministry, around church, since I'd been a believer at 17 years old. And I wasn't doing any of that anymore. I wasn't working. I had a wife, and I had 2 stepkids and 2 biological kids. I'm trying to pay bills. There's no money coming in. And I started to get real bitter, I started to get real angry. I know somebody had set me up to get me fired.
Yeah.
And I started to get real angry about the whole thing, and started to wonder, like, do I want to do this? Is this what I'm supposed to do? Maybe I missed it. Maybe I should be doing something else. But in the middle of that, God started to teach me some stuff. And that's when God spoke to me. He spoke, I'm not going to say an audible voice, but God impressed on me that all the ministries I've been part of, all the pastors I've been under, all those things, I'd been looking for a male role model to lead me, right? Because I didn't have that as a teenage guy. And nobody was there for that. And the problem was I've been putting these people in positions of leadership on a pedestal and expecting them to perform to that. And God, I was praying one day, and I felt like God asked me, he says, okay, are you ready to let me be your father? Are you ready for that? Because you've spent your life as a believer trying to get other men to fill that father wound for you. And I was like, it blew my mind. I was like, wow, that's pretty deep.
Yeah.
And God took me through a process with that where by putting me in that situation, he did begin to heal things in me. I did look to God as my source, And I really never thought I'd do ministry ever again, dude. I was burnt out on the whole thing. I was like, I don't care. I got a job working at in sales, pretty much. And the environment was, you ever see Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. It was a startup company. Everybody's like 20-something. I'm the old dude in the group. And everybody's just kind of people are doing coke in the bathroom, and everybody's sleeping with everybody else. I'm like, what is going on? And I'm here in the middle of it. Like I was a youth pastor for my last job, and I'm doing that. I'm like, what the heck is happening here? But I managed to maintain it. But I got to the point where I was like, I just want to make money, man. I'm done with this church thing. I'm done with all that stuff, you know? And in the middle of that, a friend of mine who's pastor a church over here in North Valley goes, hey, I was supposed to speak at this church on Sunday, and I can't do it. Can you fill in for me? And I was like, I don't really want to because it pays $200. I was like, I'll do it. That was literally why I did it. There was no holiness to it. There was no like desire to preach the gospel. I was going to get paid $200 to show up and talk. I was like, cool, done. I pulled a sermon out that I'd done years ago and like tuned it up. I didn't pray. I didn't study. I'm just like, whatever. And I go and I preach and like people connect with it. And they go, hey, you want to come back again? I was like, I'm not doing anything else. Okay, cool, whatever. And I came back and then God started like moving my heart. And they said, we'd like you to be our new pastor. And now here's the thing, I'm divorced. It's an Assemblies of God church. They pretty much have a rule that like, if you're divorced, you can't be a pastor. It's part of the bylaws and stuff. And I said, sure, because I was like, they're not going to hire me. Like I knew there's no way they're going to hire me. I went through the whole process and they said, because my ex had left me and it wasn't something that I'd done, that she'd been unfaithful and left, that they were waiving that. So now all of a sudden I'm pastor of this church. I didn't know if I even really wanted to be, but here I am.
Yeah.
And I'm meeting people, I'm preaching, we're doing ministry, things are going great. Churches, there was problems because of a pastor who had left and there was hurt in that and we were figuring out, but it was really starting to get healthy, And I was like, this is great, man. I'm starting to feel it again. God, you had me right where you want me. But because of everything I'd gone through, I still was kind of holding people at arm's length in pastoring, in counseling and praying in anything. I kind of wanted to keep everybody out here. I had a facade to keep up because in my head, I have to look like this. I have to be this guy to be a pastor. And then, this is bad. Like when I tell this story, people like it just goes from bad to worse, right? Then the woman that I'm married to decides that she wants a divorce. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do here, And I was like, they just went through this stuff with their old pastor. Now I'm here like a year or two later, and we're going to have to go through it again. This is going to hurt everybody. And I went to my main admin of the church and sat down. I remember sitting across the desk from him. I looked at him and I said, okay, look, you know what's going on. It's going to be bad. This is going to get ugly. A bunch of people are going to get hurt. I think I should just step down. She looks at me, she goes, we knew you were going to say that. And so we're going to give you a month off and to reconsider. And then if you do come back. And I was like, no, I'm quitting. I'm telling you I'm quitting. She goes, yeah, I understand. We don't accept that. Take a month off. And I was like, I left there like, I can't even quit. Like I'm quitting. I'm not coming back, But they didn't. And what happened in the middle of that is, man, it exposed a lot of real brokenness I had in my life. A lot of pain, a lot of anger, just from life, man, from abandonment issues, from being kind of like the last and the least in my family and my friend group and everything. Like I never really thought I was a great pastor. I was like, I do my best and thank God that God called me, but I'm sure somebody else could do this better.
No.
I never had that, never felt like I was a success in any of it. And I was like, well, this is it, dude, I'm done. And at the time, I'm a power lifter. Like that's my hobby, lift heavy circles for a hobby, And I love powerlifting, but it's a mixed bag of people.
Yeah.
And I was around a lot of people that weren't necessarily healthy. And in my head, I'm like, I tried to be a Christian, man. I tried to follow Jesus. I tried to be a pastor. I tried to do all this stuff right, and I'm obviously not good at it. So maybe I'm just going to go back to the direction I was going before I got into all this stuff. And I was really, really thinking, like, I'm just going to go out and be a good sinner, man. Like, it's like what Martin Luther said, if you're going to sin boldly. I'm just going to go out and blow it out. Like, why not? Right? I got saved when I was 17. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just not how it worked, man. God called me back to himself and pulled me out of where I could have been in that and began to restore me. And my church, Hope of the Valley, was a huge part of that because everything logistically, anything, an intelligent move would be to let me go and find somebody else. But instead they said, no, we want to keep you. And they surrounded me in that. And God taught me so much about grace and love towards other people and acceptance that I never understood that part. And I was able to drop that facade. And I just started being honest with my preaching, with my struggles, with like things that I'd done in the past and things I'd done while I was a pastor, you know?
Yeah.
And just being like, look, man, this is who I am. God's had grace towards me. He's still using me. He still loves me. Even the sinner that I am, he still loves me. And I started to preach that way and teach that way and interact that way with people in my congregation. And it changed everything, man. I think a lot of times the hurt that we have from other people is directly related to the way that we understand God's grace in our life and how God sees us. Because we kind of put, the way we view other people, we kind of put that on God. We go like, well, if my dad was like this, well, God's probably like this. You know, if the pastor was like this, God's probably like this. And I started to understand it wasn't like that at all. And it just brought like a fresh revelation and a new heart into everything I was doing. So that's kind of that's a long story, bro. I know it's a lot.
That's it right there. That's I mean, you. I wrote a little list of like kind of the the causes of church hurt. You know, like the abuse. You know, we've gone through that. Exploitation. We've gone through that.
Well, you know the thing about it. I was never abused particularly by anybody in church, but I've met people who have been. And I always go back to, what Jesus said about tying a stone around your neck and throwing you into the sea if you hurt one of these little ones. And people always apply that to children, which I think is accurate.
Yeah.
But I think that just to believers in general, if you intentionally hurt another believer, like there's a special place in hell for people like that. That's deep wickedness. Because I've met enough people who were hurt by clergy, by leaders in church, and the people who did it got away with it, but that person's left to suffer with those wounds. And I think that's a little different than like, I was hurt emotionally. I was maybe like mentally abused in a way or something, verbally abused, but when someone physically hurts you or abuses you, or does it in the name of Christ or the covering of ministry, that's really hard to get over, man. It's really hard to write that with your relationship with God and the church and what that looks like.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. Like God, God was working. God was working in you, when he was calling you back and, he had his purpose. And even though you didn't know it, and even though you were still holding up your wall there, he was still working on you. And that's how he works through us,
I think I was talking with my buddy, who's the pastor of the church I got fired from. I was hanging out with him the other night and talking. I said, man, all my experiences coming up to this, and he knows all the ins and outs of my life, like stuff. It would take me a long time to go through all of it. He goes, Jeff, it's miraculous from your childhood to now that you're still serving God, right? And I said, yeah, but that's the thing. People will be like, oh, you've been so faithful. I haven't been. What I know is God's been so faithful to keep me, because people look, you've been through so much and you still love God and you still serve, and God's kept me in spite of myself.
Yeah.
It's like that old song we sing, prone to wonder, Lord, I feel that, prone to leave the God I love, and I sing that, Come Thou Fount, that's the song. And I sing that, I go, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
But God's been faithful to keep me in the midst of my wanderings, man, in the midst of my trying to just full on run away from him.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you're not going to go anywhere. Sorry.
Yeah. It's that rebellion in us.
Yeah, and it is, but it's like God knows that about me. And I think that's what, so now, I'm bivocational. I work a regular job, 50, 60 hours a week, pastor. So I'm like Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays are my days when I'm doing stuff with the church. And I said to my buddy when I was meeting him the other night, I said, because of my experience, I said, I've never quite fit in with the world, but I don't quite fit in with the church.
Yeah.
I'm right here on this thing, and I'm trying not to fall over into this while I'm doing this. But I think it lets me reach people in a way other people don't.
Oh, yeah.
So it's all a blessing. Would I love to like be a full-time pastor again or whatever they call that? Sure I would. But man, the place God has me at right now gives me so many opportunities, man. You know, that I wouldn't have otherwise. I was driving home. We go out on Thursday afternoons and we take food and water out to our homeless friends in Tempe. And I went out yesterday on Thursday by myself. There's nobody out there. And I have like all these bags of food and I have these big 24-ounce cans of iced tea. And I'm like, I got to find somebody to hand this stuff out to. Well, I live over in North Phoenix, like so Union Hills and 17. And I'm like, it's a long drive home. So I get on the 202 and I get off on Van Buren and 52nd. And I just drive all the way down Van Buren, right? And every homeless guy I see, I pull over, hey man, you want and just hand, all right, thanks, brother, God bless you, you know, and I'm just driving. And then I get down to 27th Avenue on Van Buren and turn up 27th, right? Now it's like 5 o'clock on a Thursday. I mean, it's not like prime time there, you know? But so I'm driving that street, I call a couple people, and I pull up to the light at 27th and Indian School. And there's a woman there who, from the way she was dressed, there's no doubt what she was doing, right? And I roll the window down. She puts her best face on, looks at me, comes over the window, hey, baby, what do you want? And I said, are you thirsty? I said, like something to drink? And handed this can of tea out to her. And the look on her face changed from this this come-on kind of look to like really being amazed at somebody who's just taking a time out of the day to be nice to him. And I think that's what I've learned most in my walk as a believer now, that the kindness we can extend to other people, the love of God that we can show other people is what reaches people, man. Because it's rare. We live in a really hard, cold world. People are brutal to each other.
Oh, yeah.
And to step outside of that and be a friend and just be kind, you know? And I don't normally lead with Jesus. I know maybe I'm not the best pastor with that. I don't normally lead with like, so do you know Jesus? You know, it's time. I like to build relationships. I like to talk to people and get in conversation, then let that lead into something. Because I'm not looking, people aren't a mark, man. It's not a notch on my belt or another number to be added to my church. Those are people that, the Imago Dei, created in the image of God, that nobody else is going to reach them.
Yeah.
You know? So I love being able to do that stuff, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's like the woman at the well, right?
Dude, I love it. I think the story in the Bible I get back to the most is the prodigal son, man. I just so relate to that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and the whole time he's going and he's like, okay, and he has his speech ready and he's like, this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say it right. Maybe he'll give me a job and give him some food. And the father's just like waiting for him. And I've been that guy so many times, man. I've been like, okay, God, all right. Like if I just do the right thing, maybe you'll accept me. Maybe you'll love me. Like I thought I was just really working for God's approval for a long time and working for man's approval. And then when I realized that God just loves me as I am, and I don't need to do anything to get his approval, that through Christ I've been made righteous in his sight, that I'm the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. Like when I read those things, when I see that in scripture, I go, there's nothing I have to do. God's already done these things. I just have to rest and I have to lean into him in that, and God will just work through me in it. And I don't have to get his approval. He already loves me, approves of me. And I don't think a lot of people hear that, man. But I think all the stuff I went through, I had to go through to learn that.
Yeah. But also there is repentance.
Of course, yeah. Thank you, man. Man.
Right.
No, you know what? And it's true. I sometimes lean to. Here's what I always. Somebody told me one time. I always kind of lean into this. I can be too graceful, and I can correct that. If I push too hard on righteousness and judgment, it's harder to correct that. Because if I get human in that, I get my flesh, I hurt people. I become judgmental in myself, and I can hurt people with that.
Yeah.
It's hard to fix that. If I'm like, I'm a little too light on stuff, I can go back and go, okay, look, man,
Yeah.
I know but listen, okay? I can go, if I hurt somebody by coming off too harsh, like wanting to force repentance by my words rather than the work of the Spirit, then I can't correct that, man. I've already hurt those people.
Yeah.
And I've experienced myself, and I've seen it in churches, where like everybody comes down to the altar every week to get saved again. Like, what did you do during the week that like you think you've lost your salvation? Like God is angry with you now and you need to repent. Like,
I've been one of those.
right? No, I did too. I'm like crying at the altar, like God for like, and I can imagine the Lord looking at that going, brother, like son, I've forgiven you. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, so coming from that, like, so yeah, sometimes, man, I probably lean too hard into grace. And,
No. But so that in itself can be a form of church hurt. You know, just being too like there's a lot of there's some churches. I'm not going to name any, but they're pretty militant, and that's not for everybody. But sometimes you got to hear it. Especially like the fire and brimstone. That.
I was part of that for a while, right?
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, there was probably a time in my life, like, dude, I was like abusing drugs and getting drunk every day and doing all that when I was a teenager. So when I got saved, I needed like some rails.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, those rails aren't rails anymore, man. That's bondage. It's like when you're like every day, like I got to do this and I got to be this kind of person. You're like white knuckling it and stuff. Like, dude, I think I was reading a book. I was working at a steel plant in Pennsylvania, and I was on my break. It was like 3:00 in the morning, third shift in the steel plant. It's brutal. But I was on my break, and I'm reading a book, sitting on a piece of machinery. And in the book, the guy makes this statement. He says, right now, as you are, God cannot love you more than he does, right? And he will not love you less. That was revelation to me, man.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I never heard it put like that. Like, I can't do anything to make me God love me more or less. Doesn't mean that I get a pass.
Yeah.
But the love of God is constant towards me. So
yeah, it's like I feel sometimes he's just like, okay. It's like
it's like
the one church says disappointments, all of you.
I saw the Chingano one. Yeah. No.
Yeah, but it's funny.
But no, yeah, and if you have kids, you understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's times when you've looked at your kids like, I love you, but boy, I want to just like smack the taste out of your mouth right now. It doesn't change that I love you, but you need to stop messing up. And I mean, he's a good father. So I get that.
So right now, I want to get into like some of the ways that we can heal basically from church hurt. I mean, like. Before you and I were at the same church, like I said, it was a free-for-all. There was all kinds of immorality going on. And, as a new believer, I was on fire and going to that church and then going to my next one. And my next one was even worse. We were a bunch of, 20-year-old teens. We didn't even know that you had to be qualified for a pastor. The guy we picked, he was, he was a rapper basically. And he could preach, he was a preacher. But he wasn't qualified. He wasn't, any of the qualifications for it, right. A bunch of crazy stuff going on. I ended up leaving, and then I ended up backsliding, and then I go to this church. And then, of course, I met my ex-wife, and we have a beautiful daughter together. And, now we've healed from all that, and we're good. But
that's great.
It took me a while to even get back into church. Like I was telling you earlier, like it's amazing. You even said it. Like it's amazing that we're even still in our walk, like
so we got it all,
because if I could tell stories, I would tell you what was going on over there, and it was nuts. And so how are some of the ways like you heal? Like there's abuse, things like that. There's betrayal. Been through a lot of betrayal in those churches. Like how would you approach? You were talking about it earlier that you were put through some kind of counseling and things like that, but like, what would you suggest as like, for different church hurts?
Yeah, I think the abuse thing, I think that's going to take on different levels depending on what the abuse was. Obviously, I mean, scripturally, we understand this, that we forgive as Christ forgave us.
Mm-hmm.
And as a believer, see, this is a tough thing, man, because it takes maturity as a believer to understand that there's nothing that's been done to me that's worse than what I've done to Jesus. But that's hard to swallow when you've really been hurt.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing. But I think forgiveness is the biggest thing. And sometimes we want the people who hurt us to say that they were wrong. You're probably never going to get that from most people. 99% of the time, you're never going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So in your heart, in your spirit, you have to bring it before God, and we have to release those people. What I did, I was sharing this with you before we started, when I gotten fired from the church I was at under strange circumstances, I was really depressed, but I went through a list of the people I was angry at who I believe had done me wrong. And I went through them, and because I couldn't talk to them in person for the most part, but sent messages to each one of them, asking them to forgive me for my anger towards them, for what I perceived as hurt. That was weird, but it was freeing. And I only got 2 responses back from people. They're both very positive. And they're both like, man, I appreciate that. Look, here's what I did. Like, there was an ownership of it,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And that was great. Everybody else, there was never a response, but it freed something up in me.
Yeah.
You know, as far as like manipulation and stuff goes, and boy, there's a lot of that in church, man. It's real sad. But like, we want to, it's like, especially in leadership time, sometimes unhealthy leadership will grind every last bit they can get out of a person to build their own ministry, to the detriment of the actual person. And when you've been used like that by somebody, it's hard to trust people again. And I think that's something God has to heal in us, man. But we have to recognize it first. Like we'll go, well, I'm just tired. I'm just this. No, bro, you're really hurt. Like something happened to you, and somebody just used you for their purposes, and you feel that. So you got to kind of own it. You got to be like, yeah, this is really what happened. Not like, oh yeah, you know, I was real busy and all this stuff, and I had to take a step back. And no, man, someone hurt you.
Yeah.
Like say what it is, you know. And if you have to tell them, tell them. But the thing is, contacting between people who hurt you and all that, normally you're just not going to get the response you want. So if you're waiting for that, it's probably not going to happen. I don't have a huge church. I mean, I'm not going to speak like I'm like this mega pastor or anything. I'm not. I have a small church. We love people. I love the people in my congregation. The amount of hurt I've seen people from pastors is crazy. Like the church I'm at now, the pastor was there before. They had like 200 or 300 people at the church, and he had a moral failing and had to step down. It went from like 300 to like 70 people in a couple of weeks. And at that point, I'm like, so are we following Jesus or are we following our pastor?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm real clear on that with my church, man. I tell people, I'm like, don't follow me, bro. I'm a man. I'm going to screw some. If I haven't hurt you yet, I probably will in the future. I'm just never going to be on purpose, but I'm going to say something's going to hurt you. You're going to get offended at something I say. It's going to bother you. And if I do, come and tell me. Please don't hold that. Please don't like dwell on that. Come and tell me and we'll talk. And if I did something wrong, I'll own it. If I didn't, I'm not going to confess that I did something wrong, but we'll talk about why you feel that way.
Yeah.
Right? But the amount of people that when a pastor falls or does something crazy, they just stop going to church, that tells me that you probably weren't following God. You were probably following this guy. That's a whole other issue in the American evangelical church, you know.
Yeah.
If we're following Jesus, if we're following our group, you know.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I've been reading this Paul Washer. It's a tiny little book. It's called 10 Indictments on the Modern Church.
Yeah.
And it deals with a lot of that stuff. I was going to say that's one. I'm glad you brought it up. It's one of the most important things is just don't stop. Like once you stop, you're just leaving yourself open. You know, you're not armored up. You're just waiting for the enemy to attack you there.
Well, we need fellowship, man.
Yeah.
Like, people are like, we read that thing. It sounds real cool. And put it on T-shirts. As iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens. Right, because iron rubs against iron and like rips pieces of iron off and sharpens it. It's not a pleasant experience, you know. But when we go to church, we expect it to be like, oh, it's like Candyland. We're all singing songs and holding hands. It's like kumbaya and stuff. Like that's not church, man.
Yeah.
Like there's got to be some of this. You got to get around people and be uncomfortable. And the problem nowadays is people get around people and they're uncomfortable and they leave.
Yeah.
Because there's so many options. There's a church on every corner. Dude, I live on Union Hills off the 17. It's like 2 miles to my house from the 17. I pass 6 churches on the way there. And some of them are like right beside each other. It's wild. I look at it and I'm like, what is going on? Do you guys have a fight? What happened? You know?
Split up.
And there's just, so people tend to bail as soon as things get difficult. And that's the other thing, man. Being uncomfortable, being offended, being corrected, because maybe That's not church hurt.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, I was hurt by the church. I want to get into that. Like, what happened? Because there's church hurt, and then there's somebody being a pastor or a brother or sister in the Lord to you, and you didn't like it. That's different. But a lot of people throw it under the same umbrella.
Oh, yeah. In my church, there's people sometimes, there's topics that get tough and they get up and walk out.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, I've had people walk out while I'm preaching. I'm like, that's fine. That's okay. I don't go out of my way to offend people, but if it offends you, there might be a reason you're offended.
Yeah. Well, the Bible's not supposed to be, Candyland. It's,
Right.
It's supposed to offend. It's double-edged sword, right?
Well, because it's our sin nature, man. Like, our nature doesn't like that, man.
Yeah.
Like, people have a hard time. Like, I was talking the other week in church, and I said, people are like, oh, these little babies, and they're so cute. And I said, kids are wretched sinners by nature, okay? And they were looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, look, dude, you put two kids in a room alone with a toy, someone's going to hit somebody else. Because that's just how we are. And that needs to be corrected in us. But when we're talking about real church hurt, that isn't it. And I think a lot of times when people are really hurt in church and they're sincerely in a relationship with Christ, they wonder what they did wrong. Even though someone else did it to them, they internalize that and go like, what did I do wrong here? Because they're sincerely walking with Christ, so they're examining themselves. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, in the middle of that examination turns into something else because they start to take ownership of something that was done to them. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that gets kind of tricky.
Yeah, and I wanted to make a point about reevaluation. Sometimes when that stuff happens, you kind of reevaluate. You're like, what the heck am I doing? Like, am I a Christian? Should I even be in this church? Like, what am I doing? Which leads, because I read a lot about like deconstruction, and like that's never, it never seems like it's really healthy. Like some people do come back from it, but a majority of them don't. When you're re-examining, I think that it's really important that you re-examine things like, your faith, you re-examine like doctrine, like what are you practicing, things like that.
What do you believe?
What would you say?
I agree with that because I know. Look, like I said, I got saved when I was 17, so I have a list of people that I've been friends with that aren't serving God anymore. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're in this for any period of time, especially if you get into it when you're young, like there's a lot of fall off. There's a lot of fallout in people's lives. And I've talked with these people at length, and some of them, they kind of went that route and they tell you they have their own faith in God now. And I'm like, well, you have faith in something, but it's not even scriptural. And it's not like, so that's not really faith. Mm-hmm. You've kind of taken everything you want and thrown out everything you don't want. And that's not how God works, and there's people just leave the church completely.
Yeah.
But the deconstruction part, I've gone through some of that, man. I think that's a big word we apply to a lot of stuff. So it's real vague when you say you're deconstructing. What does that mean? Well, okay, so I was raised in like traditional mainline denomination. I got saved in Pentecostal church. I got discipled in and went through ministry training in the church that was the biggest church in America at the time when I was there. So I got the big church thing.
Yeah.
Right? And in the middle of that, I got a lot of the bad teaching I got as what it looks like to be a believer, what it looks like to follow Christ, what it looks like to be a pastor. And so I had to go back and re-examine those things. Mm-hmm. And so I guess there's some deconstruction in that. But what worries me is when people say deconstruction, they get to the basic elements of their faith. And okay, we're not deconstructing the virgin birth. We're not deconstructing the resurrection. Mm-hmm. We're not deconstructing sin and righteousness and repentance. When you get into that stuff, that's when it goes too far.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not, as long as it stays out of, dude, your traditions and stuff, I mean, like I'm really big on agreement in the necessary things, and we can disagree on the other stuff, and we can all go to heaven together. I'm an Assemblies of God pastor, right? But there are times when I lean towards Calvinism, certain pieces of my theology, say, but I can also see Arminianism and the things, and so I'm not like, look, we're all going to heaven together. If your idea of what the mechanism is on how you're saved, I don't think that affects your salvation. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. As long as it's not essential doctrine, right?
Right. That's the, so with the essential stuff, we need to be in agreement, but you can deconstruct. And if it's your traditions and maybe some bad teaching you got, Like, being in the assemblies, being in Pentecostal churches, boy, all that name it and claim it, that whole prosperity gospel thing, that's hurt a lot of people.
Yeah.
Still does.
Still does, yeah.
So but I was part of it. I would have said that was right for a long time. And I had to realize, like, oh, that's not right. There's a lot of problems with that. But I think that comes by life experience. You go like, wait, so, because if you're taught that, and then bad things happen to you, well, that doesn't fit with your theology at all. So you have to deconstruct that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's just a difference in term, not terms, but difference in words, I guess, really.
Yeah.
I want to kind of wrap it up here, but I wanted to also just talk about basically picking up pieces from every experience you had, because it is, it's all ends up in our testimony, it's all in our witness. So everything that we go through is not, even though there might be some hurt behind it, you have to pick up the pieces, kind of like, take the meat off the bone, and keep that stuff. I want to also, say that there's certain things that you don't want, because some things you can't pick it off. Like, if it's meat on a bone versus if it's like a milkshake, you can't pull poison from a milkshake.
Right.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
You got anything you want to add to that?
So I think just like anything that's painful in life, you have to learn what your part of it is and what happened to you that wasn't your part. For me, like, I had to take ownership of certain decisions I made, and decisions I made not only for me, but for my family and my kids and my wife and stuff. I had to go like, that was a bad decision. Like, you put yourself in a bad place. It doesn't excuse what happened once you got there.
Yeah.
So I had to take different things out, because it's like when you get divorced. It's never always one person's fault. It takes two people to do that. But some people, you talk to them, and it's like not their fault at all,
Yeah.
And sometimes with church hurt, it's like if you can't own your part in it, you're going to repeat that, man. You're going to put yourself in those situations again. You're going to get in things that are unhealthy.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be able to get out of it. So I think owning your part, being realistic about it, and being realistic about what was done to you or what you experienced.
Good
That's
point.
big.
Well, amen. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, man.
It's been such an awesome time getting to, like hang out again and talk about some stuff, because it's been a while. It's all full circle.
Yes. Amen.
This is our end of the episode, and I just want to thank Pastor Jeff for coming by again, and we'll see you next time.